So, hello everyone, and thank you so much for joining us this evening at the Fine Arts Society at 25 Carnaby Street. This talk is for London Art Week and is to celebrate our current exhibition, which is showing the work of the artist potter Hylton Nel. And we have a very special guest this evening. I'll quickly introduce ourselves first. I'm Florrie Evans, I'm the director of the gallery, and this is Patrick Duffy, my associate director. And we have here with us today Moira Benigson, who is a great friend of Hylton's and probably his most devoted collector, I think it's fair to say. And she's known Hylton for 30 years, I believe. She is a businesswoman and entrepreneur, but a lover of great art and ceramics. So Moira, thank you for joining us today. We're very excited to have this chance to have a little sneak peek at your collection and learn about your relationship with the artist, which really takes us to our first question. Can you tell us a little bit about how you met Hylton Nel, please?
Thank you for that introduction. I wish it was 35 years ago, because it would have meant that Hylton and I were much younger than we are. It's actually 42 years ago that we met.
Goodness.
So I met Hylton in 1975 in Port Elizabeth, South Africa, through a very close friend of ours, mutual friend by the name of Christopher Peter, who was a student of Hylton's at the Port Elizabeth Technikon. He'd studied ceramics, but he hated the mess of the clay, and so had changed to fabric making. And I met Hylton at Christopher when I was only 20 and he was 35. And so there was a big age gap, and I met him one Saturday, and he invited me to dinner in his home with his then partner, Bernard, and somebody isn't on mute.
Now they are.
And I went probably to my first dinner party ever at Hylton's home, and we became firm friends then.
That must have felt very sophisticated as a 20-year-old.
I can assure you it was extremely sophisticated, and I always tell the story that up until that evening, I thought that mayonnaise came out of a bottle, but when I arrived at Hylton's house, he was making his own mayonnaise, and I couldn't believe it, for dinner that night.
Was he serving the food off plates that he'd made?
He most certainly was. And I remember the evening distinctly, and some of the guests at the dinner were people that I would never have encountered at that young age, including Professor Robert Brooks, who ran the art school in Grahamstown, which had a very good art school in South Africa, and other friends of Hylton's, all around the age of about 35, 40. So it was, I wouldn't say it was intimidating, it was like a door opening for me.
And being so young, how long did it take you to start your collection, to pick up the bug and collect his work?
So that was 1979, and I did 75, and I'm not sure, I never saw buying Hylton's work as being as becoming a collector, really. But in 1979, he had a show in his amazing studio, which sort of a house that hung over this long road in Port Elizabeth, where you could see the sea in the distance, but it was in the city. And he had this beautiful show, which was where there were two incredible figures there, which actually live in England. And it was a show that celebrated the wedding of two people that were very close friends of Hylton's, and became very close friends of mine. And that was the first time I think I'd ever been to an exhibition. And people came from all over South Africa and some from England for the show. And it was absolutely an extraordinary evening. And that's when I bought my first pieces in 1979.
And can we ask you what they were, Moira? Do you remember?
Yes, yeah. I bought a vase, which in fact, it's a cat vase. So it's you've seen it, Patrick, but it's a sort of funnel-shaped vase with a cat on it. And the best thing about it is that, you know, Hylton works prolifically, and as he's finished this exhibition, so he started his new batch of work. And based on that vase, he has started a new iteration of those vases. And I was very lucky to get a photograph of the new vase today, and with roses in it from his garden.
Oh, how lovely.
Fantastic.
And he's really kept on making vases, and I think anyone who visits our show will see he is obsessed with cats as well. And this is an off-the-cuff question, but does he have lots of cats? Does he have many pets, or more of a
yeah,
kind of...
I wouldn't use that word obsessed about anything about Hylton, but he does have a love of animals, and he always has many dogs and many cats, and they can come from in various ways. They can be born into his house, they can be given to him, and they can be found. So they are a variety of types of dogs, but always very special, and they always appear somewhere in some batch of work.
There's a fantastic quote that he has used a few times in his work, which is, "People can be pigs, but most cats are okay," which I think is very funny. And probably,
yeah, I think he always has a very good relationship with his cats and his dogs.
Well, I think we'll come around to his cats and dogs later on a bit more. But first, you were the person who first introduced Hylton to the Fine Arts Society. I know there is a complex web of connections there. Could you tell us a bit more about it and how it came to know the gallery?
So when I think back, I think how absolutely insane I must have been. But in 1994, somebody persuaded me. Someone had seen, in fact, Maureen Doherty, who owns the store Egg in London, and a very close friend of hers, Geraldine Flax, who I happened to share an office with at the time, persuaded me to, in 93, 94, they'd come to my home, seen Hylton's work, and they said, "You have to put on an exhibition of Hylton's work." I said, "Fine, let's do it." I mean, you know, I must have been mad. But anyway, we did. I said to Hylton, "We're going to have a show. We'll find a venue and we're going to do it." So we did it in Christopher Farr's shop in Primrose Hill. And friends of ours, Tony Collett and David Champion, lent us, who are also collectors. David unfortunately died, but Tony Collett, they are both collectors, and they lent us the furniture. Christopher gave us the space. The boxes arrived. I think Hylton and Bernard came, and we had an absolute bun fight of a sellout show. And Minhog was a great friend of Tony and David, who are architects and decorators. And she came, and she absolutely adored the work and adored Hylton. And I think it was then that they met. We had a dinner. He met Min. They got on extremely well. So when the Fine Arts Society and then after that, Hylton and I used to have what we called Tupperware parties, where he would send the work over, I'd put it into my kitchen, and there would usually be an absolute bun fight as to who would buy what, and of some notable collectors. And then when Richard Ingleby was working at the Fine Arts Society, he wanted to start on the lower ground floor, what he called a contemporary space. And he asked Min, or a group of people, but in particular Min, who she thought would be good. And she said, there's this ceramic artist Hylton, and Richard got in touch. I went to the Fine Arts Society. It was very intimidating, but that was the start also of an incredible relationship, because what happened on that day, just out of interest, was I walked in, and on the floor was a Gluck painting of a bowl of pansies. And I just said, you know, I have to have that. I'll buy that right now, which is what I did. And so Andrew McIntosh Patrick and Simon and Peyton were a bit, you know, sniffy about what was this work that was coming in. The work arrived, it was hung, and it was a sellout on the first night. And Andrew and Hylton got on extremely well, and that's how it started.
Wow. And at this time, obviously, you'd moved to London, and Hylton also was living and working in London at this point. Is that right?
No.
No. Ah.
I had moved to London in 1983.
Right.
This was already 1996, and Hylton left England. He never lived in London. He lived in Whitstable, and he left England, I think, in about 73 or 4, maybe 1974. And he was teaching in Port Elizabeth.
So he'd come over specially.
Came over specially for the Fine Arts, for the Christopher Farr. Sure, I think he must have come to that. And he definitely came to the Fine Arts Society, which was which is the photograph you've got.
Yes, and we feel very lucky actually, because our ex-director Andrew McIntosh Patrick, who went on to have such a lovely friendship with Hylton himself, has contributed some pieces to our current show. So we've got some archival examples of Hylton's work as well, directly from Andrew's collection.
Yeah.
Which is lovely to see the old cats and the new cats, the old plates and the new plates, and the synergy between them, and really how, although his style has evolved over the years, there's still a very distinct voice that I think carries through the decades and remains very much Hylton's own vision. Are there any pieces in particular, Moira, that in your own collection that have a special resonance for you? What are your favourites, would you say? And
well,
have a little look.
I tried to pick one, but I'm afraid I couldn't.
It's a difficult question. They're all so unique and personal.
Yeah. But I suppose the first one, it has to be the cat vase that I bought in 1979.
There it is, that you mentioned already. That's an amazing shape, isn't it?
It's a mad shape.
Yeah, why can't I see that? I wonder. Anyway, I can't. So is it on the screen?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So yes, so that's the cat vase, and that's the vase that he's iterating into now again. So it's quite different. So I'm glad that I'm pleased you put it on the screen, because it will be interesting to compare the two. I suppose the other piece, there are two other pieces that sit together high up on a beautiful library cupboard that I have as you walk into my home, and they feel, both of them, I look at them every day as I walk into the house. And they sort of, in a funny way, give me comfort and look after me in a way. So the first one is the figure of the Madonna and Child. And it has some words on it, which is ora pro nobis, which means pray for us. Now, I asked Hylton whether that was, I asked him yesterday actually, whether that was based on a piece of Staffordshire, and he said, no, but the method of making it is like a Staffordshire figure. It's in a press mold, so he makes a mold and the clay is pushed into the mold. And so that's how he makes that. And he made 3 at the time. And mine is in those softer colors. The other 2 are blue and white.
Mm.
Extraordinary. They're absolutely extraordinary.
Yeah. A little rock star hairdo going on there, which is brilliant.
And then this other piece which stands next to it is a huge, it's big, that dog.
Mm.
And that dog is carved from raw kaolin.
Wow.
Comes from Grahamstown, which is a tiny place in South Africa. And when it's heated up, it becomes practically porcelain.
Oh.
But so it stands next to this dog, and I feel that that's the guard dog of this house. And it has 2 huge eyes, which are made from marbles, wow. 2 blue marbles. And it has a marvelous tail, which is a penis. And I feel as though it carves the house.
You can't actually see that on a photograph.
Yeah, but it does. It's quite sort of roughly carved out because it was a lump of clay, which Hylton then carved.
Right.
Yeah, it almost looks like carved wood, doesn't it, Moira, really? It does have that textural quality.
Yeah, it's more worked into than, say, the Madonna next to it that you can see as well.
Yeah.
There's a definite sort of difference in style. I notice on the dog it's got little painted claws, little painted nails.
Yeah, and big red lips.
Yeah.
Huge red lips, yeah.
I think he quite likes giving his animals little manicures and pedicures. We have a cat mother and child in our current exhibition, and she's got little red fingernaily type claws, which are rather amazing.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're very, very fabulous, these pieces. I can see why they're favourites of yours.
Yeah. And you did touch on another figurine of the blue and white Madonna, which you did mention to me yesterday that it's one that you would have liked to have. So, I mean, are there any others that you sort of look back at now and think, God, I wish I bought it when I had the chance?
Yeah, so I didn't have the chance to buy the other 2 because I bought those at an exhibition which I flew from London to South Africa to open that exhibition. But there were 2 other big collectors there, one in particular, Max Arlen, who passed away a number of years ago, who always got there first. And Max got the blue and white Madonna, and another dealer in South Africa who was also a very big collector of Hylton's, called Peter Visser, got the other one. But you did ask me, are there pieces that got away that I wish I'd had? So I own a painting that Hylton made of a Chinese teapot. So it's a painting, not ceramics. And there was one in Max's collection. So there were 2 paintings that were a pair. I had the teapot and Max had the painting of a Chinese plate. And that got away, I'm afraid to say. And the other thing is that Hylton has a friend in Cape Town called Henrietta Dax, and when I visit her, I always think, and we have very similar collections and probably of a similar size. I look at her collection with longing always. And although there are things in our collection that are similar, but she has things that I don't have, and vice versa.
Wow.
So I would say anything in Henrietta's house, I wish I had.
I'm sure she'd probably say the same thing about your collection.
Probably.
Vice versa. I think this is quite a good moment, actually, while we're lingering on the blue and white Madonna and Child and a rather wonderful vase that looks quite oriental, to talk about the influences in Hylton's work. I mean, you mentioned also his love of Staffordshire figurines, which I think really comes through, but with these two pieces in particular, you see the influence of Delft ware, the blue and white, and I know he uses tin glaze as a method as well, and his love of celadon glazes. We've got some beautiful celadon pieces and bowls in our current exhibition. So he's a bit of a magpie artist, I think, in the most wonderful way. He takes these traditional methods and very much makes them his own, but he also seems to jump around thematically. Often with his slogans, he might pick out something political. I noticed that you've got an Obama plate on your kitchen wall, Moira, and I wonder, can you give us a little bit of an insight into how he arrives at these themes, or what piques his interest and why?
Yeah, I think Hylton doesn't like one particular thing, but he has a curiosity and an interest in many things, and he imparts his knowledge so well. And so, in fact, so much so that I went to the School of Oriental and African Studies and studied the history of Chinese ceramics from the 10th until the 16th century. So he has a vast knowledge. And we had a wonderful time the year before lockdown, where Mark Barban from the Stevenson Gallery, Hylton, and my family went to China together, and we looked at the most marvelous things in museums. But I saw in Hylton, so we all went to these amazing museums and looked at things, but the place where Hylton was happiest was in the markets, looking at things in the markets, at the dealers, jade, ceramics, just things in there. And that's what is so exciting. And that sort of comes through in his work. So, and he's hugely knowledgeable, but he also has an incredible memory. So it really helps, and it all comes together.
Yes. And I know that he gets a lot of inspiration from literature as well. You mentioned just Henrietta. Am I right in saying Henrietta is a specialist bookseller who
Yes, and so there's a constant flow of books going, because Hylton lives in a very remote part of South Africa where there's there's no cinema or museums and very few people. And so, and I suppose, as with many people, as he gets older, so he's slightly more isolated, and he reads a lot. He always has read a lot, but he reads a lot.
Yes. Well, funny if that leads me quite smoothly onto my next question, actually, because I think it was said by Michael Stevenson that Hylton's work has quite a connection to rural existence in the landscape, particularly he lives where he lives, like you say. It's isolated, it's him and acres and tens of thousands of acres of land around him. Do you feel that connection within the work that you have in your home? And do you also have a connection with South Africa because of that?
I have obviously I'm from South Africa. I have a very strong connection to South Africa. My home is quite South African. It has a stoep on the back, which is Afrikaans for a veranda, and it could be an Afrikaans type of, not an Afri, but a sort of, it's influenced by South Africa.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Hylton likes the rural, the isolation, that I'm a city person for sure. But the one interest we have, which is sort of meets halfway, is, and that comes from my mother, but and that was something, the one subject my mother could talk to Hylton about was flowers and gardens. She loved her garden, and Hylton absolutely loves his garden, and so do I, and I love mine. So we can talk, we speak regularly, and we could have a whole conversation about gardens and plants and all of that. I'm not that into the landscape, like mountaineering or go. So, but we've got a way to meet halfway.
I love the idea that the pieces that you have from Hylton are a connection for you to your home and to South Africa, and they also for you encapsulate the memory of when you acquired them and why you acquired them and what was happening in your life at that moment. And something I find quite interesting is the fact that each piece Hylton makes, he puts the precise date on them, so they record a moment in his life as well. And as a collector, does that have particular resonance for you? And do you feel that it helps you to understand his progression as an artist? I mean, how do you see his work with these dates? Do they?
I think Hylton didn't do that for many years. I wonder when he started dating the work. I think he started. So what I like is that, because not all the earlier works are dated. So I showed you earlier this piece here, which I love because I can hold it and it feels so amazing. And
that's like a cow. Just
yes, it's a simple piece of clay with a painted top, a line over there, and a painted bottom. Hylton, maybe he will be able to tell me after. He can't remember whether that was made in Antwerp when he was studying ceramics, or whether it was made in Whitstable in England. But so that's a very early piece from either the late 60s or the early 70s. That has a stamp on it, but no date. So, but the date is important. And the thing that Hylton's always said is, it's good to decorate a plate, but it's also very nice to decorate the underneath for the person doing the washing up.
Oh.
So often when I'm washing up the plates that we eat on, I can see a date and think back on, because they're all dated now, and think, God, this was made in 1985, or this plate was made in 87, and what were we doing there and where were we at the time? So it is quite interesting. But the other thing is in terms of collecting, it's Hylton taught me, and in fact Victor, my husband, who's a big collector, as you can see by these African neck rests all around, that's his collection, as are the rude plates that Victor collects. All these plates here are extremely rude and all made by Hylton and all belong to Victor. And Victor always says, which is from Hylton too, that it's very important to have a relationship with the person that you buy from, that sort of sends the work back into our lives in a sort of special way. And so that's very important. So that's why, sorry, I didn't let me finish my sentence. That's why on this show, I wanted to buy something that had come out of Andrew's home.
Right.
But that connects me
Mm.
back to the first show at the Fine Arts Society, and to Andrew, who I visit when it's not COVID in Morocco. And it's sort of, it's like a beautiful closed circle.
Absolutely. I think that's what we find so special about the show that we have on at the moment. You were just mentioning about washing the plates after dinner, and it's definitely not something I could bring myself to do, but I know Hylton...
The washing up.
Not the washing up. Eating up of his plates, using them. I'm not allowed nice things, so I'd naturally throw it on the floor accidentally and destroy it. But I know Hylton's works are both for use and for display, and I guess I guess what I've just said. I mean, how nervous are you about using his pieces in everyday life?
I mean, there are some plates that sort of are down on the bottom shelf, which are everyday plates, and then sometimes after a while, I think, God, I shouldn't be using this every day, and it goes to a top shelf. And two of those plates actually that have recently gone to the top shelves were plates I bought in the first exhibition. So I thought they shouldn't be used anymore and they should go up, but I'll take, I took two others. I always serve, if there are people to dinner, I use Hylton's plates. We eat on them every day. But I mean, they're getting expensive.
It's true. With that in mind, have there been any casualties over the years?
They most certainly have. Yes, they have.
Yes, in fact, there are a couple of things that we have in our exhibition from Andrew McIntosh Patrick's collection, which have got repairs to them. There's a very beautiful bowl with a spider and a heart on it, and it's called the spider bowl. But Patrick said the other day, we really ought to call it the broken heart plate because it's broken and been stuck back together. But I rather like that, and I feel like we could do some kintsugi with it, get some gold leaf and give it a whole new lease of life as a broken heart.
Definitely.
But thinking about use and display, I believe Hylton has himself said that his figurines, for instance, are very much ornaments, and he makes them just for the sheer joy and pleasure that they give things to be displayed. And it also gets me thinking about the fine line between decorative art and art itself. And some people might look at a China figurine, whether it's Staffordshire or Hylton Nel, and go, that's an object for my mantelpiece. And someone else, a collector such as yourself, Moira, would look at that and go, this is high art. And do you have any thoughts on that? And what?
No, I'm afraid to say I don't, because I didn't. I think this is just off the top of my head speaking, but I think this idea of the collector, maybe that idea has been there forever. I didn't set out to be a collector. Hylton's things, I'm surrounded by not only Hylton's, but things Hylton and I might have bought together, things that, there are things in Hylton's house that have come from England that I've bought for him. Hylton used to have a shop in Port Elizabeth and Cape Town where he sold, antiques, or what we call tsatskas, things that you put around the house. This house is full of those sorts of things. And then there are some sort of a few serious paintings on the wall, but I've never thought about that. I've never thought about buying things in that way. I like connections. And so, for example, in my kitchen, there are 3 paintings. the top one is a painting made by Bernard, who was Hylton's partner of their home in Port Elizabeth. The next one down is by a painter in South Africa called Georgina Gratrix, which is a Hylton vase that she painted, because she's also started now to acquire Hylton's works. She loves it, with some flowers in. And the bottom one is the Hylton painting that he made of the Chinese teapot. And they feel connected.
A triptych.
I don't know.
Yeah, that's lovely. I like the idea of collecting organically and it just sort of coming together. And I wonder how much of that is also connecting with your memory of that first dinner party at Hylton's. You know, you say you eat off his plates daily now, and I find that very lovely, because your first experience of real mayonnaise, or you know, off a Hylton, out of a Hylton bowl or whatever it might have been, you know, is now in your life every day, and I think that's really lovely.
Yes.
Coming back to our exhibition that we have today, we're very lucky because Hylton made some special pieces for us. He's done these wonderfully quirky double cats that almost look like Siamese twins. They're wonderful. And the cat mother and child, among other things. Do you have some particular favorites of his new pieces?
In the new show?
Do you have any?
Yeah, the cat mother and child, absolutely. And he made 4 of those. Hylton has one, I have one, and there's another collector that I alerted to that piece, because that he too, the collector, and I have also bought things together. In fact, at the last show, there were a pair of vases. He bought one and I bought the other. And so that's quite an interesting connection. And so, yeah, of the new works, I think those are for me really special. And then there are some sets of plates there that are not new, but are I think absolutely spectacular. Of course, there were 5 rude plates there, and they had to come home because the wall this side needs to be. They stop over there, so there are 5 more for the wall over here.
Oh, I feel bad we don't have for our viewers today an image of the Willy plates, but if they look really closely at the mantelpiece that's on the screen now, they'll see his Willy vase, which we have placed. Well, we placed with a painting by the British surrealist John Armstrong of 2 jugs that somehow became quite cheeky and suggestive once placed with the Willy vase. The Willy vase and the painting have both sold now. In fact, actually, many of Hylton's pieces have gone, and we've been overwhelmed by the love for his work. People are really enamored by his quirky style. I think it's fair to say.
Definitely, and we've gotten a lot of people, returning clients who've bought in the past, but also a surprising number of people who live in London who know him directly and have come in to see his work and have shared their stories about Hylton and pieces in their collection. And I dare say you know most of them, Moira. Do you?
Yes, I know sort of David Lewin was in, and he's a great friend of Hylton's, and he is a collector and was a dealer. He had a stall on Portobello Road for many years, and has a very good eye. So
yeah, it's like, I think it's like what you were saying, that there's a connection between all of Hylton's collectors, and whether directly or indirectly, you all share a similar passion. And on similar themes as well.
Well, Moira, thank you so much for giving us such a brilliant insight into your collection and Hylton Nel himself. And I feel like we should open up the questions at this point to people who have been enjoying our, I hope enjoying our conversation with you. So I think we're going to open it up now for questions from people.
Yeah.
We're going to try and have a look on the chat. Let's see, participants, there should be Q&A. We're going to open it up. Are there any questions out there from people?
Don't be shy.
Yes, please don't be shy.
Nothing as yet.
Moira, do you have anything you would like to add at all? We do have one. Let's see. What are some more memories with Hylton that stand out? So any more special memories with Hylton that stand out?
Someone's put me on mute.
Oh, let's unmute you.
Oh. No, you can't do that.
There you go. So special memories that stand out for you.
Well, I suppose in recent years, it would have to be our visit to China. And maybe many I don't know if I can actually.
That's
too many, I guess. Far too many.
I think, I suppose the best, not the best, but some of the best memories I've had have been when we were all much younger, and it wasn't wild, but we used to have these crazy dinner parties which were raucous and full of interest. I used to, there were a group of people in Port Elizabeth and in Cape Town that were very connected to Hylton, and they were, it was sort of exciting. And Hylton's cousin owned an amazing restaurant, a Turkish restaurant. He now lives in Turkey, and it was magnificent back in the day. And we used to have wonderful dinner parties with many people, and those were quite exciting, coming from England and visiting. And I suppose my visits to Hylton are always very special.
Yes.
We've got another really good question for you. What was Hylton's output whilst at Whitstable, and why did he choose Whitstable? I'm assuming it's more than just the oysters.
Yeah.
why
Whitstable, and was he prolific then, or was he?
Oh yeah. So when he was in Whitstable, he was living then with somebody called John Nowers. They were partners for many years, who was also a ceramic artist. And I think they lived in Whitstable, and they, at the time, Hylton was showing at the Contemporary Applied Arts.
Right.
And they worked there. I suppose maybe it was to do, I'm not sure why they lived there. They lived there and bought and sold things. That Hylton already was buying and selling things then.
I bet there were some great junk shops in Whitstable. They're probably are really good for antiquing.
Yeah.
Always sort of coastal towns and villages are so good for truffling.
Yeah, Aladdin's Cave.
Yeah. Oh, we've got a really sweet comment here from Rasheen Kriegler. Hylton is my neighbour in the midst of nowhere, and we love him. That's lovely. Patrick, do you want to read the next question? Oh
no, it says not a question.
Oh.
Specifically not a question, but a big thank you. And well, no, thank you, Althea. She says she feels has been invited into your home, and loves his beautiful, witty work. A new artist to her, and she looks forward to learning more about him in the future.
That's lovely.
It
Thank
is.
you.
Yeah.
I have a question actually, which is on sort of I'm intrigued by, since you showed us that little cow and you said Hylton doesn't know whether it was when he was a student in Antwerp.
He will know when he sees it. He just he hadn't seen it then.
But Antwerp, I don't really know about this chapter of his life. Can you sort of elucidate a little bit?
Yeah, he went. So in the catalogue, in fact, I don't know if is Richard on the Zoom or not. Richard Ingleby.
No,
I don't know. Maybe. I'm
See.
sure they're watching it.
Richard, who also has a very nice relationship with Hylton, there is an error in there where he says that Hylton is self-taught, and that's not true, because he did fine art at Grahamstown, Rhodes University, but then he went to Antwerp to study ceramics. So I think it was a master's maybe, or and it was a very enriching. The stories from Antwerp are wonderful, and he then travelled in Europe, and he made long-lasting friends in Antwerp. One in particular, Marianne. So it was a very special time in his life, leaving South Africa as a young man and going to Antwerp, and then after that to England.
Fantastic.
I think it was a long time in England, yeah.
I was going to say, I suppose also that might have been the beginning of his love of Delftware and of tin glaze, and it reminds me of the fact that, you know, a lot of the first potters of tin glaze pieces, tiles and things in London in the 17th century were Dutch emigres who came over and taught the Brits how to make that kind of pottery. So I like the idea of Hylton going to Antwerp and learning the trade there, and still doing it today. And I think it does give his pieces, especially his figurines, this gorgeous soft quality. His pieces, they're very gentle. They don't have that kind of almost, I'm finding it difficult to express, but you know how some China figurines look really hard and crisp and carefully, almost too carefully painted. With Hylton, there's a kind of wonderful spontaneity, which a freedom, yeah, which I associate with sort of Dutch 17th century tin glaze as well. But that's just my interpretation. Well, Moira, thank you so much. As
Yes.
that lovely comment said, we really have been invited into your home, and thank you. We're really touched that you agreed to speak with us this evening.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, and thank you everyone for attending, and yes. I hope that you found it as enriching as we have.
Definitely.
Yeah. Thanks. I think that's it.
That's all.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
What do we do?